All right. Well, before we start talking about any of the actual happenings on the wrestling program, the folks at AEW, there's been some discussion, Brian. Apparently, a report was put out that Dynamite, their flagship program on the Max streaming service, it averages about 500,000 people a week. That's the report that was put out, and people have been discussing it. And the AEW faithful are like, well, see, this proves, we do 1 million people plus every, and the more calm and rational individuals are like, wait a minute, where does this come from? And where are we going with this? And who put this out? And is this possible? And there's a ton of questions you can ask because we don't know. And that's the whole thing. We don't know. We don't know because they don't release a lot of these numbers. And we don't know where this fellow got them from. Or we don't know if this is for the entire world. Bolivia, Brian, it's an AEW hotbed over in Bolivia. Maybe they've got...
You in Bolivia. I don't know what this is.
Well, I'm just saying, wait, is this the whole world? But even then, they've been available internationally and in the United Kingdom and the English-speaking countries of the globe here. They haven't set the world on fire with numbers. And they're, is it in this country? Well, maybe it's just all these new people that got the streaming service that didn't have cable before. So suddenly, if that would be it, then we're expected to believe that even though the numbers way before the streaming service were right about where they are now, just almost as many people decided, oh shit, look at this brand new wrestling show we can watch now, even though the cable outlets have twice as many people involved with them as viewers as the streaming does. A lot of these things can be asked, but we don't know. Brian, that's the thing. We don't know, and we admit here on the program when we don't know anything. And that happens quite often.
Well, this is a unique story. We could say we don't know. But the only thing everyone can say is true is that nobody knows. And anything out there, that's why, anyone could say anything. I could say AEW is getting 10 viewers on Max. I could say they're getting 10 million. Both have equal chance of being true. I mean, it's just no one knows anything.
Well, there's where you're wrong. See, now that's the only thing you've said so far today, Brian. It's wrong. It's incorrect. I got to call you on it. One man knows. One man knows because one man, as in his own fashion, has done what he normally does when there's times of strife and chaos. He cuts to the meat of the matter. He gets to the facts and he presents a clear, concise, easily understood explanation or Dave-splanation of the whole matter. It's time for another segment of Dave-splaining here on the program. Would you like to hear, Brian? Now, I'm not taking any, I want to put credit where it belongs. This is the Wrestling Observer newsletter by our friend Uncle Dave Meltzer. I don't want to take any credit for what you're about to hear. I don't want any credit. I don't want to be involved with what you're about to hear. These are the words of Dave Meltzer in the Observer explaining this situation for all to hear. Brian, are you ready to take notes?
I'm interested to hear where this goes. Yeah, I have not read this yet.
Well, I was sent this from the home office in Lincoln, Nebraska. We've got stringers all over the country on this case. And it says, a report this past week by B.J. Bethel of SEScoops.com listed that Dynamite on Max averages about 500,000 viewers. Now, let's stop here for a second. Have we ever heard of B.J. Bethel? Is this kind of like one of those Boris K. Fabian type of nom de plumes, Brian? Is there any pfefferism involved here?
I don't know. I can't say that I'm too aware of him.
Well, nevertheless, apparently he got the scoop. So Dave goes on to say, the story reported 60 million minutes watching within 24 hours of the ending of the show, which translated into a Nielsen rating would be about 480,000 if we're going by homes, since viewers per home is unknown by streaming companies. But if it's similar to television,
okay, can you
know what this is? I'm reading this exactly as he can see. You got to follow, Brian. But if it's similar to television, that would be roughly 624,000 to 672,000. So the 60 million minutes number sounds way high. Now, what is your question?
I just need some clarity on everything you just said. So I guess where I first jumped in, the streaming services don't know how many people watch the streaming services?
Well, I'll say this again, Brian, since obviously you're not paying attention.
I'm sorry.
The story reported 60 million minutes watching within 24 hours of the ending of the show, which translated into a Nielsen rating would be about 480,000 if we're going by homes, since viewers per home is unknown by streaming companies. But if it's similar to television, that would be roughly 624,000 to 672,000 viewers. So the 60 million minutes number sounds way high. I hope that cleared that up for you, because there's a long way to go here. In theory, that would be equivalent to a little more than a Nielsen number first day number, in the sense it's 24 hours rather than 5 hours, but also with a streaming number, you don't know viewers per home. Parenthetically, I estimated 1.30 to 1.40, the usual range. And also, if you watch something twice in streaming, you count as two people. And in Nielsen, you can watch over and over, and you only count as one person. What we do know is very little.
We agree on that.
Max keeps its numbers to themselves. Nobody at AEW knows the actual numbers. Top execs at WBD, ad buyers, etc. don't know. The NBA and NHL don't know either. Sounds like maybe Home Depot and Raka Khan don't know either.
How can he say WBD don't know if WBD owns Max? How can Max keep it to themselves away from their owner?
Well, that's because fucking Warner don't know what Max is doing. And they like to keep it that way because that whole thing with Marilyn Monroe. The story stated the number is considered good, but claimed NBA games do 1.7 to 2 million in a number comparison with the 500,000. Based on those numbers, I'm even more skeptical that this in any way compares to a Nielsen viewing number, because many NBA games on TNT hover around 1 million viewers, and all of the media stories this year of the NBA's collapse or ratings decline, which were overblown because streaming numbers don't count, would have been countered if numbers were even remotely close to this. Bethel himself noted to us that the 500,000 viewer number could be total viewers having tuned in even for a few minutes, equivalent to the 2 minutes of viewing a show individual viewing numbers that Nielsen also has but are almost never talked about. That is believable.
Can I jump in for a second?
I wish you would.
Because you can't think of streaming the same way as cable in terms of viewers per home. Streaming is phones, or in your case, maybe tablets. Streaming, sure, you could put it on your TV and have multiple people there, but how many kids do that versus watch something on their phone, stop it, return to it? It is a different experience, and especially with younger people who grow up without any knowledge of cable. Everything's about the phone. Everything's about YouTube, TikTok. That's how they consume stuff. Streaming services are a plus, where you go to your parents and you say, "Can I please have the password?" The idea that, he's saying 1.3 or 1.4 people per stream, I don't think you could do that. I think that's too high. I just want to say that.
Well, he goes on to say, Tony Khan responded to the report saying that it was very consistent to what we've been told and that they are one of the top sports streaming shows on the network. He said that they were told in advance that they would not be getting the kind of data on streaming like they do on television, but that they've been told that they are doing great numbers and that he doesn't know the actual numbers Only that they are one of the top streaming sports shows on the station, and he thought those numbers were consistent with that. And then
based on nothing. Because if he doesn't know his numbers, he doesn't know anyone else's numbers. So there's no basis for that assumption.
But it sounds good. And then there's a lot more, but my head is starting to hurt. But you get the idea, ladies and gentlemen, that
a report
a lot of people don't know.
What day did the report come out? Does it say?
It said, hold on,
the
here
BJ
now.
report.
You flummoxed me with that. The BJ report. Well, that came right out. A report this past week is the way that it's.
Was it April Fool's? I'm not even joking asking that question. Was it April Fool's Day?
Well, apparently, later on, he says that he's been in contact with old BJ. I bet that's the first time in years. And BJ is standing by his story or his hard on or whatever he's standing by.
You know, it's like that old move where you could say, I'm in the CIA, and then someone calls the CIA and they ask for comment. They say, we don't comment on anyone who's in the CIA. So it sounds plausible. If you're saying no one knows the numbers and the few people that do know it won't tell anyone what they are.
But this guy found out and he put it out on the fucking wrestling website.
And it's a flat 500. You know, it's not like about 475. You know, it's a flat 500,000 people.
Well, they're rounding. Now, I can forgive that. They're rounding. Because, I mean, who would have believed him if he said it's 492,517?
Yeah. I mean,
it's all about the rounding.
The idea that the max audience would be, 80% of the cable audience is ridiculous. Yeah. At the same time, we've seen the cable audience dwindle. And I don't care how big the universe is. You can't use that as an argument. Well, there's, 200 million people have access to this. That doesn't mean they're watching AEW. Or it doesn't mean they can find AEW on the home screen. We hear that from a lot of people. So I think this is a way for a story to get out that paints an incredibly rosy picture. And there's no one to confirm nor deny it, including Tony Khan. I don't know anything, but it's consistent with what I've heard from these other people who we were just told don't know anything. And I would
From all the people I've talked to that don't know what they're talking about, it sounds plausible.
Hey, listen, also, it's a streaming service. It's part of a publicly traded company, I think, but it's a streaming service in a sea of streaming services. If someone was getting 1 million viewers for the NBA every game, they'd be putting that out there. And if someone was getting 500,000 for a wrestling show, domestically, that would be put out there. Worldwide, it's still impressive. But we haven't heard anything. And, I can understand the reason you don't want people to know how few viewers you have or streams you have. Not talking about AEW, I'm talking about any of these streaming services. No one releases they don't want to release their numbers.
Well, but here's the thing. You mentioned it a second ago that Netflix and WWE engaged in a major advertising campaign. And if you get on Netflix from scratch, you see, WWE prominently featured, whereas we were trying for a while to find AEW, and so other people have been too on Max. It wasn't like they beat people up with debuting such and such. So how would suddenly an audience of 500,000 people find it on this streaming service over the last few months when they've been on television for 5 years and those people have already been leaving before the streaming was a thing? Does it just add up is what I'm asking you.
It doesn't add up.
It just don't add up.
I do think AEW is having a little bit of a run right now where they're seeing a small bump in interest. But it's not that kind of bump. If there were that many more people watching AEW, it would be a bigger thing right now. And, you see less social media talk and buzz and interest in AEW right now than ever before. It could get better, but I don't think they're getting those. I think maybe worldwide, You know, unless Tony has a fucking farm somewhere where people are just clicking on videos all day, I don't think there's any way. There's no way they're getting that many. It sounds ridiculous on its face, and it sounds like Dave was doing his best to try to justify it as opposed to saying, well, first off, this sounds ridiculous.
Well, he did a wonderful job with words and phrases, and there was some punctuation put in at various points. Also in that statement, you should have seen it. But
If someone said this, a source said this to BJ, what do you think that source's motivation would be?
well, who would that's the thing, is if the wrestling company doesn't even know, then who would be the source that was talking to the guy that was writing to the wrestling, writing to the wrestling site, writing to the wrestling site, or writing for the wrestling site?
BJ, it's Jack Warner. How are you?
Yeah.
That's what it is. People are crank calling this guy pretending they're executives. I can't tell you who I am. I work at Max. They're getting 500,000.
You know what? He talked to Mance Warner. That's who he talked to.